Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Show It Better, and in this video we're going to see how to create this awesome night urban plan in Photoshop. So let's get started. Okay everyone, so for this image we had some inspiration helping us, which was this awesome image from the office called Fabrications, which I think they're from Netherlands. I found them via my Pinterest page, and you guys can go check out their work. They have awesome projects, awesome urban projects, architectural projects, and they also represent their projects really well. So I recommend you guys go visit their page if you want some inspiration. For this image, I used a site that is called CADmapper, which is an awesome site which I've used before in some tutorials, if some of you guys remember. It's a site that has free CAD plans from many cities around the world, from every different continent. So, and they're completely free. They have I think the AutoCAD files. I don't know if they have the 3D files, but they do have the AutoCAD files. So I downloaded the city of Tokyo because it was very similar to the image that we had. It had a coastline. It was like very dense. So I found it very interesting. If there's anyone from Tokyo watching, I'm sorry if I maybe pronounce wrong any of the cities or anything, but I am a complete ignorant in some of these subjects. So I downloaded the city of Tokyo from here, and I opened that file in AutoCAD and started exporting the different layers that file had. So as you guys can see, I had the railroads, the water structure, the coastline, the whole city, like the whole urban plan, and also the railroads. I think I already said railroads. Yes, I did. So after I did this, I imported, like the base plan into Photoshop, and I created a layer below, which was like a very dark layer. In this part, I made a very, it's something that can happen to you. So I'm going to explain a little bit, which is when I imported the image, it imported it in a mode that was gray mode. I don't know if it has happened to you, but when it gets imported into gray mode, well, everything is going to be in grayscale, so you're going to have no colors absolutely, and sometimes you're going to want to paint something, which was what happened to me. I wanted to paint it like, I don't know, magenta or dark blue, and you couldn't see the colors, so this may happen to you. So to fix this, you will go up to the window where it says mode and change the mode from gray to RGB, or if you're going to print this plan out, you want to put it in CMYK, right? After I found out about this little mistake that commonly happens, and you just have to go through it, I changed it to the RGB mode, and I started questioning what colors would be the best. I already knew it was going to be a night image, like a very dark colors, right? Because that's the feel that we want to get. But it's very different to have a dark blue, to having a dark green, to having a dark magenta. It gives very different feels. So in selecting colors, sometimes you can waste a lot of time there, but if it's worth it, every color has to be compact. So another mistake I did, another amateurish mistake I did, was not naming the layers on the PDFs I exported. So I had to open the AutoCAD file again and naming the layers, because I didn't know which one was the railroads, I didn't know which one was the water structure, etc. So as you guys can see here, that is the file that you get from cadmapper.com. and it's very complete. It's a very, very, very cool file. And after you do this, you are going to want to start importing these other PDFs on the file that you already have open, right? So as you guys can see, it didn't like import exactly on top of where it was supposed to be, and you guys may want to watch out. And if you want to have a very exact file, you want to have like the same configuration and the PDF exporter when you export it from AutoCAD. But since I did this video for the tutorial, and I'm not very technical, so I didn't put a lot of time in making it very exact. So I just I made it very visual, that it would match more or less the places where it was supposed to be. But if you want to be very exact, this is not the best workflow you might want to have. So I also cropped out the canvas because there were some parts that I didn't really need to use for this image. And as you guys can see, each PDF place has these Autodesk how do you say them? You call them marks, like watermarks that are on the border, so you might want to erase them as well. And I started, putting on top each of these layers. So this is the road, the main road structure. Then you have the railways. Then you have the water structure, and etc., etc., etc. Right? You have all these awesome structures from the city that I place them, like very, very, very amateurishly, not very exact. But you guys get the idea. If you want to be very exact, you might want to invest a little bit more time in this area. After I did this, and I erased all the watermarks around it to make the background of the coast, of the places where we have the earth, make it look darker than the places that there are water parts, right? Since the coastline layer wasn't complete exactly to the border of my canvas size, with a brush, you can press B on your keyboard for the brush. I just I drew a very short line to the end of the canvas, and then I pressed G on my keyboard or selected the paint bucket tool, so I can paint inside of the terrain, right? And I painted it magenta so I could have a reference. But then I started looking for a color that was very dark color, a darker color than the water parts, right? So as soon as I did this, I also saw that I also saw an interesting thing, which is that the coastline was still magenta, was still like pinkish, and the inside was black, right? So this is a very nice feel that the image got, because it makes it much more realistic. And now the challenge was to make these dark colors. I mean, you just can't select a true black, if you can call it that. Some true blacks aren't gonna work that well, because when you go outside and see someone wearing a black shirt, or when you see a black poster, with your eyes, it's never true black, right? The light that it has, the time of the day, how it was printed and what paper it was printed, influences a lot of that black, or any color. And maybe it's not always black. Maybe it's a grayish black, a little lighter black. Maybe it's a matte black. Maybe it's a very, very dark blue black. So you can't, I suggest that you don't use true black, as you also don't use true white. You use small variants of these dark colors. So these colors will have a very special effect on the image. So I started, trying to see what dark colors, if I wanted to be dark green or maybe dark blue. And for a lot of these layers that you guys are going to see during this tutorial, what I do is use the hue saturation adjustment to change it quickly, to change the hue. So to access that very quickly, you can press Control U on your keyboard, and this window is going to pop up, and you're going to have the hue option, the saturation, and the lightness. So I always change the hue and maybe the saturation a little bit to see if I wanted it to be a little bit greener, or if I want it to be a little bit darker, etc., etc., etc. And after this, I started turning on the layers, right? The first layer I turned on was the base layer. And as you guys can see, it looked very, it looked very, it had too much attention. And we don't want the attention on this. We want the attention on the layer we are analyzing, right? So if you guys are analyzing commerce, or you're going to want to show your new project where it's located, you want that to be the main visual aspect. So what I did was turn down the opacity on this, maybe to a 20%. So just like you can kind of understand the urban structure, but not too much. And also I started to change the hue again because I wasn't very happy with it. Maybe I wanted to be a little bit more greenish side, but then it was calling too much attention. Then when I turned on the main roads function, you guys can see that cyan blue is very, very nice. It has that very good color, which goes with the water, which goes with the terrain, but you don't want it to be too saturated, because now it gets too much attention. So what I did was, just turn the saturation down a little bit, and finally we imported the water layer, right? So first of all, the water layer was in black lines, and we converted it to white lines by pressing Control U on our keyboard, and the lightness value, we turned it all to the white side, right? So if you have only black lines and you want them to turn to be white, you can do this, or you can press Control I on your keyboard to invert the colors, or there are many ways you can convert it white, but I think this is the quickest way I found. After this, we want to apply a very interesting effect, which was the glow effect, right? The glow effect that makes the image look that it was taken at night, like that satellite image that that we see from the NASA space images. And this image, this effect, we can achieve it by, first of all, duplicating the layer, right? So you want to duplicate the layer, you can right click on top of the layer and press duplicate layer, or you can press Control J on your keyboard, and it will duplicate the layer that you're on. After you do this, you select the layer that is most on top and go to filter, and one of the options is going to be blur, the blur option, and you're going to select the Gaussian blur option. When we select the Gaussian blur option, something amazing is going to happen, which is that it's going to look super, super cool, because it's going to have that nice glow effect that we wanted. And you want to leave it at maybe 20%, 10%, whichever value you think is going to make it look much, much nicer. And after we have this, we can see that the image is starting to get, starting to look cool. It's starting to look interesting. Now what we want to do is add a little bit more texture to it, maybe add some conventions, maybe add a little darker sides, so the image the eye of the viewer will go straight to what we want it to say. So now we have more or less the colors, right? So we like the colors, we like how it looks. Now, I'm always experimenting. Sometimes the colors may not work, and you will want to turn it, maybe want to add a saturation layer, maybe want to add an adjustment layer that changes it all. So it's very normal, right? You have to experiment. You have to, sometimes by mistake, you can find out on things that you would have never found out if you had a strict procedure. So I recommend that you guys just explore and let the image talk to you, right? What does the image want? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is import a grid, right? Because I don't know, I like grids a lot, and I looked on Google for grid image. I selected whichever image was the best, and I pasted it onto my Photoshop file. You can size this image by using Control T on your keyboard, and I also pressed screen, so the images would be, the lines on the grid would turn more or less white, but you also want it to be in a very, very, very low opacity, because you don't want to have too much attention on your image, right? You just want to be in the background, so maybe a 10% opacity, 20% opacity would be fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start placing conventions and the names of the cities. So since I'm not from Tokyo and I don't really know what the places in Tokyo are, I'm going to start placing the names of I'm going to go to Google Maps and say what cities, what main cities or main regions I should name. And for this, I suggest you use a Helvetica font. That's the font I used. It's a very, discreet font. It doesn't have too much attention. We don't want too much attention on these texts. They're just, very referential, informative text. And I also added a drop shadow effect to them, because I wanted the text to be white, but since it was on top of white lines, it wouldn't be so notorious. So when you add a drop shadow with a dark opacity behind it, it kind of separates itself from those lines and makes it readable, right? And finally, we're going to add the name of the plans, right? So if this is your university project, or if you're really analyzing this for your work, you might want to add the main title of this plan, right? So maybe you're analyzing Tokyo, but maybe the plan is not named Tokyo, but it's named Water Structure of Tokyo, or it's named, Railroad Structure, or Project Urban Plan, or Master Plan, right? So this is the main title of what the plan is going to be about. I typed in water because it was the water layer that was important, and then I had a very small subtitle which was called Urban Structure. The hierarchy of the typography is very important. After this, I'm also going to add the conventions, because in every plan you have to have conventions. You have to have a north, you have to have the names of the cities, you have to have differences in hierarchy and contrast. So although it's a very artistic exercise, you also have it has to be practical, right? We're architects, we're urbanists, we're landscape architects. And after this, we're seeing that the plan looks kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. I wanted to make it darker on the side, so it wouldn't have too much attention. So I grabbed a brush with a 10% opacity and started painting a very light black on it, but it didn't seem to convince me, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it wasn't that interesting. Started looking for a grunge brush or a grunge texture that would make the sea, the whole water, the bay, look much more imperfect. Sometimes when our images look that have more imperfections, look much more realistic than where they're just solid colors that are very real, that are very unreal, and it doesn't. It looks kind of fake, and so I think that's the image that I wanted to make, more or less. If you are using this image to, make a series of urban analysis, and you have different layers, then what you have to do is just, instead of the water layer, you can now import the other layer, which is the railroad layer or the project layer, and change the name. And this is the way you're gonna have like a basic structure of how to create your plan. All right, so I think this is the final result. As you guys can see, it's not the same exact image that our reference image has, but it's with the idea that we wanted it, and with different tools, maybe with a different workflow. So if you guys remember, if you want to see the complete video, it took me about an hour exactly to create this. So if you want to see the complete video, you can go to the link down below to get the project file and the complete video. And If you have any questions, any other things that you might want to see, any tutorial recommendations, type them in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of this tutorial, and I'm just glad to be back. I hope I can make videos more regularly, and thank you for watching the video. I'll see you guys in another video. All right, bye.